All right, on this week's Author Spotlight, we'll be joined by Mr. Anthony Bryant, who is the author of Both Sides of the Bars and was recently featured on the 700 Club. About, when was that?
It's about a year ago, close to a year ago.
Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yes, once again, my name is Anthony Bryant, and I'm currently the Leadership Training Director for Gramad Enterprises, author, motivational speaker, and the founder and CEO of my organization called Split Second. I teach ethics workshops to law enforcement as well through that organization. Travel throughout the United States conducting these type workshops, as well as speaking to youth, teens, young adults on the topic of making right choices and split-second decisions that can alter the course of your life. I'm originally from Savannah, Georgia, and I moved to this beautiful city, Columbia, in 2008. And my book, Both Sides of the Bars, it speaks chronologically about my life and how it details my stellar profession in the military, my profession as a correction officer, my profession as a deputy sheriff, my profession as county highway patrolman, and how one wrong choice derailed the course of my life. Just one wrong choice. So the book is used in schools. It's used for those who are incarcerated. It is used in law enforcement community as well, parents. So it speaks of all these things that encompass my life and what have happened with me during that transition, and how even coming out of that after spending 10.5 or 10 and a half years in federal prison, how I rebounded and doing quite well for myself.
Tell us a little bit more about your story of how your fall from grace and your redemption.
Yes, well, thank you. What happened was back in the late 90s, FBI officers, undercover FBI agents, posed as undercover drug dealers, and they told what they did was they were looking for officers who were willing to protect them as they travel up and down the highways of Georgia and through the state as they travel through. They told these officers that they didn't have to see any drugs, they didn't have to touch any drugs, they didn't have to sell any drugs. All they had to do was just kind of provide escort. Well, at that time, my oldest brother, he's 3 years older than me, he was a city cop, and they recruited him and they recruited his supervisor. Long story short, my brother asked me to get involved in it, and I did. And as a result, a year later, it netted 11 law enforcement officers in this sting operation that they did. So it was a defining moment in my life to know that I went from one status in life to losing all of that, but it was a really defining moment in my life. It reconnected me to my faith. And through that, as it talks about in the book, there was a time in my life when I had no idea that I would be going to prison that long, or even a prison at all, But it happened, and when the judge sentenced me I would say about 6-8 months into my incarceration, I was contemplating on suicide, and actually had the means to do it with pills that I've hoarded up throughout the weeks and months. But God spoke, and through that, it transpired into a conversation to where, long story short, of course I didn't do it because I'm here now, but it transformed my life into where I am today. So fast forwarding in 2008, I vividly recall as God began to move me in positions. I'm starting this organization. I actually started during my incarceration. I wrote my sister at that time. I wrote her letters throughout my incarceration, and one of the letters that I wrote her, I vividly recall telling her that God said that I'm going to be working with law enforcement officers when I get out. And, she responded, "Oh, that is really great. I'm going to definitely pray for you." 2 years after that, I wrote and said, "Hey, God said that I'm going to have a book out." And sure enough, she wrote back. And all of this was still while I was incarcerated. And then the third letter I wrote to her, I said, "God said that, this is going to be a movie or some type of documentary based from the book." And that's in the works even as we speak. So I'm excited about what is going on. And so my book gives all these advice and tips on those who are incarcerated, that those who have made mistakes, about how to navigate life outside of prison, and don't allow you to just become a victim. But it gives insight on how to start planning even while you're incarcerated. In other words, I say don't get locked up twice, meaning don't become physically locked up and then your mind is locked up. Always thinking and preparing as if you're going to be getting out the next day. And that's what I did for 10 and a half years of incarceration. So I had a plan, I had a goal, and I began to work through God's help, execute that. And had some great jobs. I was an educator in the school system in the Richland 1 and the Lexington 5 school district until now I am the leadership director of Grimaud Enterprise. And Grimaud Enterprise is one of the largest area developers of precision tune that's responsible for franchising, developing, and maintaining auto care centers throughout the United States. So they are responsible for about 95 and counting. And I'm the first African American to hold an executive position in that corporation. So I'm excited about that. I started in January, and that company is doing some great things and becoming an agent of change themselves, or as we've partnered and collaborate on things in the community that we're going to be doing and currently doing.
You say you had a movie, documentary coming out. Anything else?
Well, that's in the works. That's in kind of talks right now. So that's not if, but when it's coming out. Mm-hmm. And so I'm excited about that. Just one level, the next level of where God wants to do this and broaden the horizon on. It's okay, to make a mistake. Is how you rebound from the mistakes. Because many people make mistakes, and we want to talk about redemption, and we want to talk about moving forward and using that as a guiding post and not a hitching post. Yeah.
So, when you were writing this book, what, I guess, stuck out to you the most? What was like the most memorable part that, like, when you tell people about this book, you want them to know that this was probably the most important part of it?
Yes. For me, I'll allow people to know this book uses preventive as well, because it lets you know that when I share in my book, the hardest part for me, that was challenging for me when it came down to my two kids. At that time, I was married to my high school sweetheart. We had been married for 12 years before this happened. And my daughter at that time was 11 years old, and my son was 5. So long story short, when I was released from federal prison, my son was getting ready to turn 16 and heading to college mindset. And my daughter was actually graduating from college. I was out, as soon as I got out, 3 months later, she graduates from college. So that was the hardest part for me, to know that our actions sometimes impacts not just ourselves, but the people that we love and the people that love us. And so they experience things in their life. There is a portion in that book called Life Without Dad that both of my kids has a part in. And it's very touching, even as I read it today, because some of the things I didn't know. They did very well for themselves, both of them college graduates and doing very well on themselves. But some of the things I didn't know that they hadn't experienced themselves because their dad wasn't there. And their mom did an amazing job of raising them by herself, and she never remarried or anything like that. So she did an amazing job in raising those two kids. But that was the hardest part. So I want individuals to know And when I speak to the law enforcement community, I've spoken at law enforcement banquets and keynote speakers at banquets for law enforcement, and I teach ethics classes and workshops that, one wrong choice can kill 1,000 attaboys. So we must remember that our choices sometimes impact us as a domino effect that extends beyond even us.
Okay. Do you mind? I know you said do you mind telling us, I guess, a little bit one of the stories that your children had?
Sure. My daughter shared how at that time she was 11 years old, so she was used to her dad coming to her school and eating lunch with her in my uniform, and she was very proud of that. And I would come pick her up in my squad car because we had take-home squad cars. So she was very proud of her dad. And then when this happened, children will be children, and some children were not as nice to her in that aspect, or things were whispered and said, and it was hurtful. So growing up, she stated in the book how she missed the love of her father, and how he used to always be there and hug her and kiss her, and because of that, in other words, she said she became promiscuous at an early age. I believe she said it was 15 or 16 when she had her first sexual experience. And I tell her to this day, I'm still looking for the guy who that happened. She won't give me the name, but that's okay. But I'm still looking for him. But nevertheless, that was a heartbreaking moment for me because she was looking for love and attention, in the aspect of her dad just being there, holding her and hugging her and spending time with her. It helped. And my son, similar in the sense of, he didn't have a male figure in his life to tell him about the birds and the bees. So in the book, it talks about how he learned off the internet about women and things of that nature. Of course, his mindset definitely have shifted from there, but that was his first encounter of having exposure to learning about the birds and the bees, so to speak. Yeah.
Your experience inspired you to write this book, and it also inspired you to do what you're doing with outreach. You're talking to different police groups, children, schools. How did that all come about?
Well, it started out with all it took was one speech. I come with it with a passion because it's part of me. And my platform is to inform and educate individuals so they don't have to make similar or same mistakes that I did, especially with the law enforcement community. So I allowed the kids to know that, hey, listen, prisons is not what you want, regardless of how it may be glamorized by rappers or whatever the case may be. It's not what you want. Just do the right thing. Listen to your parents, grandparents, or whomever are raising you. Listen to the community of people that are doing the right thing. My book talks about how to succeed as a young man or young woman growing up. So we talk about I call it the 10 Commandments of being successful. We talk about the 10 Commandments of surviving prison for those who are incarcerated. The book talks about how to successfully survive prison, because that's a whole nother culture in itself. So we want you to navigate it efficiently, where you can take something that appears to be miserable as prison and turn it in to a ministry, or turn it in to a progression. And it's just about reframing your mindset. We become a victim or we become victorious. It just depends on the mind and how we reframe it. So I refused after about year one of getting over myself to say, no, I can be better than this. And I'm a living example of that. So, yes.
Okay. Where can people find your book?
My book is fine. You can actually buy it from me, myself, or it's on Amazon. I have some really great reviews on Amazon on it as well. And my website is www.split, S-P-L-I-T, the number 2, N-D as in second, .org. And you can order it from that as well, or request any speaking engagements. I'm found on there as well. So I'm excited about that, and just excited in the trajectory of where it's going at. Yeah.
I do have one more question for you. Not getting off the top of my head. Since you've been on both sides, and now you teach officers, and you teach ethics, what are some, and especially with our current climate, what are some of the lessons you really, really stress to officers during this time?
All right. Well, law enforcement, that's a whole nother community in itself. So being that I've been in that culture, I definitely expressed about just do the right thing. Temptation in that field is great. So we deal with the causes of why, many times law enforcement make unethical choices. We talk about the Superman complex, and we talk about because everyone else is doing it. So there are several clues that we address during my workshops. But overall, we're talking about, what can you lose in that aspect? So I use my personal life as an example in that. I show a 1997 video of 11 police officers getting arrested, one of them myself, as a result of making a wrong choice. So I hone in basically what that is, just do the right thing even when no one is looking. Habits become lifestyle. Practice those habits and they become a lifestyle. Don't get swayed by outside influences because it will come back and haunt you down the road.
Awesome. Anything else you want to add?
Les, I'm just excited. Life is great. And we sometimes have to learn that during mistakes, we can turn lemons into lemonade. And I'm just grateful for a second opportunity to express and share my knowledge, my experience, and all that encompass that to make life better, make society better. Yeah, with our youth, with our parents, with law enforcement. Yeah.
Alrighty, thank you so much for your time. It was greatly appreciated. Once again, do you mind please telling us where they can find your book?
It can be found on Amazon, or you can contact me directly. I always keep a lot of copies on hand. My website, once again, is www.splitsecond, that's second is 2nd.org. And you can see all the awesome things that are going on with my organization. And you can contact me through there as well.
All right, thank you once again for your time. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you guys for all the great things that you were doing and highlighting authors, spotlight, and other things that you were doing in the community as well. Thank you guys.